I was a little sick, sorry if you still hear it in my voice, and I decided to throw on the new Apple TV Plus show, The Studio. To be transparent, I don't pay for Apple TV Plus, I was freeloading. And to be transparent again, I put The Studio on because I thought I was going to hate it. Something about being sick makes you angry at the world, and I thought this would be good fuel for the fire. However, even though my sinuses felt the pressure of Jimmy Fallon in that one interview with RuPaul,
a drag queen,
I was having a ball. Also freeloading off my friend, I watched season 1 of Severance a couple weeks ago. With both of these in my mind, as well as the looming series of successes for Apple and bombs for Netflix, I've been thinking, is an Apple TV hit a day keeping the Netflix away?
This is not part of the commercial! Some jerk making your life miserable, you want revenge, I'll fly.
At the time of writing this video, there's only 3 episodes out, and I've seen them all. The pilot, The Promotion, sees Catherine O'Hara's Patty Lee leave Continental Studios to allow Seth Rogen's Matt Remick to take over. And Remick has this love of cinema and vows to bring Continental into a more respectable space. But his boss, Bryan Cranston's Griffin Mill, fights him at every turn. Cranston is named for the central character of Robert Altman's excellent film, The Player. And Rogen admitted that they never even talked to the Altman estate about it, so fingers crossed, they don't get mad. The studio sort of pales in comparison to The Player, but, I mean, they're doing different things, and nothing is going to compete with something like The Player, so let's just forget I even brought up that comparison. Rounding out the cast are Ike Barinholtz's Sal Saperstein, Matt's idiot friend, Chase Sui Wonders as Matt's assistant Quinn, and Catherine Hahn as Maya the marketing exec. Now, the core cast is obviously immensely strong, but it's the cameos and supporting characters that have been getting a lot of buzz in the press. The Promotion opens with a fake film starring Paul Dano and is directed by Peter Berg. Later, Remick tries to make a Kool-Aid movie with both Scorsese and Nicholas Stoller, and it closes with cameos from Steve Buscemi and Charlize Theron. Although it's not a cameo, David Krumholtz also plays Stoller's manager, and I gotta shout him out because I've loved him for a minute, but also because he stays rocking with the community. He's in Harold and Kumar and Master of None, which, I mean, I don't think anybody else has ever done that.
Hey, and they say there's no more Jews working in Hollywood, huh?
I might be the only guy to praise Krumholtz more than Martin Scorsese for a role, but hey, that perspective is what y'all are here for. I'm going to talk about it slightly out of order, as the 3rd episode, The Note, is the best episode so far, in my mind, with a great premise, hilarious guest performances from Ron Howard and Anthony Mackie, and such a Larry David-esque dilemma at its core.
a Jew boy, fucking fag.
At 35 minutes, it feels like the perfect length for the story, ironically so if you've seen the episode. The episodes are vastly different lengths, which I love because it indicates that Rogen and Goldberg are writing to the story rather than to a runtime. Speaking of, the 2nd episode is only 22 minutes. But there's a good reason for that. The Oner features extended support from Oscar-winning Woman Talking writer-director Sarah Polley and Oscar-nominated Past Lives star Greta Lee. Unlike the Scorsese role, which plays his prestige for comedy, Polley and Lee have more defined, actual roles that require them to abuse Remick. Like its name suggests, The Oner is both about and is a oner. Most of the show features long takes with handheld camera work, so this doesn't feel cheap or out of place, but rather very natural. When I first heard there was going to be a Oner episode, I was groaning. I thought it would feel trite, but it's a better episode than the pilot, The Promotion, and it bookends very beautifully. So, how do they pull off these high-concept techniques? The series is scored by Birdman composer Antonio Sanchez, who doesn't seem to score all that often, as his primary focus is still releasing his own jazz albums. He's great and one of the best parts of both Birdman and the studio thus far. The DP is Adam Newport-Berra, an up-and-coming cinematographer whose recent credits include The Bears' The System, that's the 1st episode, and its Marcus episode, Honeydew. Kendrick's Count Me Out and N95 videos were also shot by him, as well as the now iconic final flawless video Kanye made before he lost it, Closed on Sunday. I think Berra is excellent and probably doing some heavy lifting since Goldberg and Rogen made The Interview, and that looks like... To put it simply, I think the studio has a promising first 3 episodes, a cast and format that could bloom over seasons and seasons, and a visual style that sets it a cut above 30 Rock, Curb Your Enthusiasm, and Entourage. Through Point Grey Productions, Rogen and Goldberg's company, the studio has 5 creators. 2 of them are Seth Rogen and his career-long writing partner Evan Goldberg, both of whom are credited as the directors of every episode. When it was originally ordered straight to series by Apple, Veep writers Peter Hayek and Alex Gregory were also added as creators. They both have the official credit for Veep's episode Mother, so they won me over immediately. The 5th creator, Frida Perez, is a relative newcomer who was an assistant to producer Alexandra McCaddy on Rogen's 2020 film American Pickle, and then his assistant for Mufasa. Seth Rogen is Pumbaa, man. Y'all remember that?
and Zendaya is me cheap.
I'm shocked that in 2025 it's still possible to climb up the ladder the old-fashioned way. So it's incredibly motivating to see her effective rise from indie short film director and assistant to streaming show co-creator in a couple years. It seems like this kind of money being given to Seth Rogen would not have happened on another streaming service. There are successful shows on other services, but they mostly occur from the producers giving C-list writers and directors smaller budgets. Take someone like Mike White, who's doing pretty well for himself with The White Lotus. He didn't get much money to make it during the pandemic, and his credits immediately preceding the series include The One and Only Ivan, Pitch Perfect 3, and The Emoji Movie. The multi-season hits of our time are typically made by newcomers, which is good in theory, but it also means that when they fail, they're kind of screwed and can't blame it on the low budget or poor support from the streamer. They'll only give big checks to big names, leaving them in a bit of a catch-22. You could keep giving low budgets to less experienced showrunners and have 1 in 1,000 succeed, or give larger budgets to someone like Ben Stiller. Now let's be clear, A-listers flop, but they're the only ones that you give real money to, so you kind of have to hire them eventually. Hulu and Netflix get famous writers and directors, but mostly for miniseries rather than shows they intend to run annually. Paramount Plus tries to leverage its IP with Star Trek rather than focus on the voice behind the IP. And Peacock, well, they're just hoping you want to rewatch The Office for the 17th time. Apple TV Plus is prioritizing prestige content, and I think you can tie that back to the strategy that Apple makes in all fields, including their tech products. Apple is never the first to anything. They weren't the first to move towards the streaming space, but they were the first to do it in the Apple way. Unlike a lot of new services, the user interface for Apple TV is super nice. I'm not an Apple fanboy or an Apple hater. It seems like everyone has to be one or the other, but I just praise them when they deserve it. With a series like Severance, the sets really stand out. They definitely do not skimp on the cinematography either. Although I haven't seen a ton of Apple TV Plus stuff, it seems like all of their flagship shows are shot fucking beautifully. Sidebar. Before I get ahead of myself, there's bad stuff, there are ugly shows. We've all seen that one frame from Ted Lasso if you're as chronically on film spaces online as me. But I think the highs are pretty high for the ratio of viewers compared to the other services. Alright, that's the end of the sidebar. There are very few shows in the streaming space that are visuals forward in a non-stylized way. I believe to my core that stylization does not equal quality. I got some shit for hating on The Bear in a video I made after Season 3 came out, and to keep it a buck, I don't hate The Bear. I just think it's indicative of the gimmicky visual language that's becoming popular. But case in point, Severance in the Studio or some other new shows like Dope Thief are competently lit with great production design and just look nice. I can't put it any other way because it's not a style, it's a standard of quality. And I think the absolute explosion of Severance Season 2 is definitely going to inform how Tim Cook and his people move forward. Even though Netflix miniseries Adolescence has done pretty well these last few weeks, it's not like it was when Netflix used to consistently drop prestige series that would get the whole world invested in the mid to late 2010s. There's a vacuum here for Apple TV Plus to take advantage of. And if they take the note that the world is giving them, they'll embrace the higher budget, higher concept strategy and leave the cheap Jason Segel, Harrison Ford vehicles behind. On March 14th, 2025, Netflix released one of the most expensive films ever made, The Electric State. I don't mean most expensive for Netflix or for streaming. I mean in the history of the motion picture in every decade and in every language, The Electric State is the 13th most expensive film ever made, unadjusted for inflation. Don't worry though, adjusted for inflation, it's in the 30s, ranking above whatever, just Elizabeth Taylor's Cleopatra. The Electric State was directed by the Russo brothers, cemented as blockbuster-crafting juggernauts after making The Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame, earning Disney $6.6 billion. And that's almost as much as one egg in Biden's America. The Electric State starred Netflix's homegrown Millie Bobby Brown and the messiah of middle America, Chris Pratt. Many have described the film as AI-generated. Not me, though. You can argue that Electric State and the Apple TV Plus comparison is unfair because Netflix still releases prestige stuff and Apple TV Plus still has its fair share of shit. And I'd agree with you, which is why the duality is more about what they expose about each other than a direct comparison. The Studio is a series that only exists because of where Hollywood has descended. Although we've always had satires of the industry, we're at a unique place where the satire is better directed than what it's satirizing and the industry standard. I've complimented the shit out of the studio, but I think it's fascinating that it's only thriving because of the terrible milieu in which it's releasing. We might be in the golden age of satires because the world is so fucking laughable. The Righteous Gemstones, the franchise, the White Lotus, or The Substance, The Menu, and Triangle of Sadness. But look, I don't want to dose this video up with the negativity that I've given it in the last couple sentences because I genuinely think we're at a turning point. Just like Hollywood got too big for its britches in the 50s and imploded in a new Hollywood, the period that produced the great American films. We're approaching the critical mass again. These new Avengers films will test whether we've gone too far or if we've got a couple more years until the industry Fonzies on over that shark. But it's okay if the industry explodes into a million pieces because although there won't be as many dollars floating around, more of that money will go from the boardroom to writers, composers, DPs, grips, and everyone who makes this industry worth dreaming about. I grew up with dreams of RDJ rocketing across Manhattan in a CGI suit. I grew up with post-James Cameron, post-MCU Hollywood. I love some films that Seth Rogen's character Matt Remick would have made. But that's because these films had a story at their core. Sometimes. I love to see the art in everything. Every film, from the biggest blockbuster to the $200 B movie, can have heart. I think it's just way more likely that the $10 million movie can do it, and maybe better than either of those extremes at that. The two options shouldn't be a long TV show made for a huge budget by an early 2000s comedy goat or a $300 million MCU derivative. There can be something in between, and I think Remick would agree with me.
Our first kiss in the living room. That's a hella way to end the night.